In this video, we're going to go over the stored procedure. Stored procedures are used to group one or more SQL statements into logical units. The stored procedures are stored as named objects in a database server. So over here, we'll see we have tables, views, and under programmability, we have stored procedures. Now, the benefits of a stored procedure is when you run the stored procedure for the first time, the database server creates an execution plan for that query and stores it in cache. So this makes the query run faster each time it runs after that first time you run the query or the stored procedure. And another benefit is that client applications do not need to know anything about the underlying data structures. So all that they see is the stored procedure name and not any of the code you wrote to bring back the data, which is good if you have any outside applications or maybe you have a business intelligence application. The XML will contain some of the SQL if you write it directly to your application. So to keep that code hidden, it's good to use a stored procedure. Or maybe you have some outside vendor clients that need to access some database that you have, that you're giving them access to. You could just use stored procedures so that they can gain access to that data, but not seeing any of your internal data structures. And another benefit is that the stored procedure code can be changed without requiring any changes to your application. So say you have new filters that you need to add, or maybe you got a new client in your database and you need to add that code for that new client's filters. You can add those type of filters to your stored procedure without having to change your application. You're just going to update the stored procedure, and if you have multiple applications using that procedure, you don't need to change code in multiple places. So we'll look at the stored procedure syntax, and the basic syntax is create your procedure name as, and then you add in your SQL statement or statements, and then go. And for the end user to execute that stored procedure, they write exec or execute, and then that same procedure name you created your stored procedure with. So let's write a basic stored procedure. Now, when you write a stored procedure, it is important to use your database. So let's bring that down here for this example, because you do need to write this in your stored procedure. So now we're going to create procedure as, no, not as, sorry. And then we're going to write DBO. We're going to name it a database object, and product underscore, and we're going to say list price. And as, and then we're going to write in a simple query. So we're creating the stored procedure as this query, and go. And we're going to execute. And it says commands completed successfully. So now this stored procedure is created here. If we refresh our stored procedures, we will see list price, product list price here. Now let's open up another query window, and we could just drag this stored procedure here, and we execute, and then procedure name, and we get back that query, product ID, name, product number, list price. Now this is just for a basic stored procedure. Let's a lot of times when you have a procedure, you're going to have parameters for your application. So let's add in a parameter to this stored procedure. And let's go to our product table. And so we're going to add a where clause, and we're going to say list price. And we're going to find the list price greater than what the user inputs. And we're going to have a parameter as list price here. And then up here, we need to add the parameter 2, but we need to first find out what kind of data item that is. So we go here to list price, and it's money. So we're going to have parameter at list price, what we want the user to use, and then we're going to write as money. This is the data type. So anytime you're adding in a parameter, you need to add the exact data type for that parameter to do the comparison for the filter. So now another thing that's important before we try to change this procedure is to add in this code, which is drop procedure if exists. And we're going to take our procedure name and add that up here. And we have to write go. Now go is just anytime you execute some kind of statement, you need to write go. So even when you're writing multiple SQL in here, you need to type go after that statement. So the importance of this drop procedure, if it exists, is that when you want to update your SQL code, it will run this drop statement to first drop your SQL your stored procedure. Now, before we run this, let's go back in and actually look at how our stored procedure looks. So let's open this. Let's modify this stored procedure. So right now, this stored procedure says alter procedure and some code. Now we could try to use this code, but it wouldn't be good practice. What we want to do is drop the procedure if it exists and then recreate the procedure. Now this is important if you are working in a larger team. Sometimes you might be a developer and you're passing it on to another developer who's in charge of another environment. So you're in a dev environment and maybe they're in a testing environment or production environment. When you write the code like this, you could save the file as this type of file, SQL file, and pass on that file to the developer in the other environment. And so they can update the procedure without having to go in and use the alter query. This automatically just drops your procedure and recreates it with your new code. And also this is important to have if you ever need to back up your code somehow. You can just save this file as this procedure and update your stored procedure. Or you could save multiple versions of this file and update your procedure. Or if someone somehow drops your stored procedure, you can add your procedure back. So it's good to add in this drop procedure, and if it exists, it's good for, again, migrating to new environments where you're not the developer and you can't go in and create the procedure yourself. So this would, if you're updating code that needs to go through UAT again, this drop procedure, if it exists, is important. So now let's go back. We've added in the list price parameter, and we're going to execute that. And that was successful. And so now when we run this stored procedure, we need to add in a number. So now see, if we run this without a number parameter, it will give us an error. It's looking for your list price parameter. So let's add in a list price of 100 and execute. And so now your procedure returns with list prices all greater than 100. And we could change that to 1,000. And everything you return here will be greater than 1,000. And your user doesn't have to see that. So now we have this procedure here. I can just simply run this code and it'll drop the procedure and refresh, and the procedure doesn't exist anymore. So for our real world example, I finished creating this procedure in my environment. I'm passing this over to someone else in another environment. They could just take this code and execute it and have it in their environment. Now, refresh. And also, let's say we just added one more filter, and we said where, oops, we already have where, and we say and color, and we're just hard coding it. This filter became something different. We can alter this procedure, and now when we run it, we get back less rows, 25 rows. So let's go back and take out the color and execute. Before we had 86 rows. And now if we just go back in and change our procedure to black and run the query again, we get back 25 rows. And that's it for stored procedures.